All right, hello there, thrill seekers. It's me and the California poppies and everything else that's blooming out behind me. And that was a little piece of a song called Pimjai Lam Plairn by Paradise Bangkok Malam International Band. I hope I'm pronouncing the name of the song right. It is a song that is featured in season 3 of a TV show called White Lotus, and that's what I want to talk about today. So this, in case you're not familiar with me and what I do on this channel, this is not going to be a straight up review of the TV show. In case you were looking for something to help you decide whether you wanted to watch it or not, this is not going to be that. And there's going to be spoilers. I'm going to try to avoid major spoilers, but I can't promise that I'm not going to spoil something about the show. So if you haven't seen the show already, you might want to go watch the show first before you watch this review. I'm not going to review the show in terms of how well it was done or acting or whether it was entertaining. I thought it was well acted, well written, and I thought it was very entertaining. So there you go. That's the sum total of my review in that sense. But I just want to talk about the Buddhist aspects of the show, because one of the things I do, for those of you who don't know who I am, is I've been studying and practicing Buddhism for over 40 years now. I'm older than I look, and I have been teaching and writing about Buddhism for about 23 years now, so I got a little bit of background in the subject. And one of my main focuses, or foci, I guess, in my writing and in this YouTube channel and other things that I do has been pop culture depictions of Buddhism. I think one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by this is one of the first places I got exposed to any Buddhism was in a TV show, which was Kung Fu, starring David Carradine as the Buddhist monk who walks the earth, or basically walks the Old West, and has fights, Kung Fu fights with cowboys and things like that. So there's a lot of Buddhism sprinkled throughout that series, and I enjoyed that, and that was one of the things that got me interested in Buddhism. So I'm always interested in the pop culture stuff. And another thing was for a long time, I ran a little Buddhist meditation center, a Zen Buddhist meditation center specifically in Los Angeles, and so I would get people who were in the film business who would come. And I remember one guy who came to a few of our Zazen sessions, our meditation sessions there, was working on a show. I don't remember. He might have told me the title of the show, but I don't remember it. But it was supposed to be about a cop who was using Buddhist wisdom to solve crimes, like a detective show or something like that. And he said he was pretty high up on he wasn't the show runner, but he was pretty high up in the show, and he was trying to get the showrunner to actually go and come to either my space or maybe the Zen Center of Los Angeles or one of these spaces where he could practice and learn about real Buddhism. And the showrunner specifically said, the guy who's writing and creating the show, oh gosh, anyway, sorry, Ziggy's doing something over there, that's my dog, didn't want to. He was refused to actually participate in any real Buddhism because he thought it would somehow prejudice his work as a writer. I don't get it, but that seems to be a fairly widespread attitude among people like that. So, okay, The White Lotus is an American TV series, and it is set in what seem to be a chain of hotels called the White Lotus, and these seem to be luxury hotels for the ultra-rich. The first season, which I guess was 4 years ago or so, took place at a White Lotus hotel in Hawaii. The second was a White Lotus hotel in, I believe, Madrid in Spain. And this third season takes place in a White Lotus hotel somewhere in Thailand. And that's the one I want to talk about because I've been watching this show since it started. I enjoy the show. I think it's a good show. But right near the end of season 2, this came out, I don't know where I saw it, probably somewhere on the internet, that the showrunner of White Lotus had decided to make his next season about Eastern religion. He wanted to explore Eastern religion, specifically Buddhism, in his show, and I thought, oh, that could be interesting. So I was especially interested in seeing what he did. So I want to talk about how he treats Eastern religion, or specifically how he treats Buddhism in the show. So the show, each season has a different set of characters who you follow for 8 episodes, which take place over a week at this hotel. And there's always a murder, and you're always kind of shown the murder or something about the murder in the first episode, but you don't know who was killed or why until the final episode. So that's the format of this show. It's like a murder mystery. It's also described on the internet as a dark comedy, which I get why they would describe it as that, because it's not exactly typical drama, but it's not like a ha-ha comedy like Seinfeld or something like that. It's more of a low-key comedy. So, all right. Let's talk about how Buddhism is treated in this show. So the first episode of Season 3 is called Same Spirit's New Form. So we're already, just in the title of the show, we're making a kind of oblique reference to reincarnation there. Although reincarnation doesn't really come up, it comes up a bit in the show, but not too much. And the main, as I said, there's a bunch of characters in this season, but the main ones who really get involved in Buddhism are the Ratliff family, who is a rich dad and his 2 sons and 1 daughter and wife, who come to spend a week at the hotel. And spoiler alert, the dad finds out that he's basically lost everything and is probably going to go to jail as soon as he gets home because of some business deals he's done that went wrong. But he's still stuck for a week at this hotel where they don't let him use his cell phone or anything to deal with this problem, because they're trying to... In this season, the hotel is sort of meditation-oriented, so they're trying to make people mindful during their stays, I guess. Right at the beginning of the show, we are shown something that always irks me about how Buddhism is displayed in TV shows, which is a guy meditating really badly. So I'll show you a picture. This guy is Zion. The character is Zion. He is the son of one of the main characters in this season of the show, and he's being taught how to meditate, and as what usually happens, he's in this awful position with his knees way up and he's kind of hunched over and stuff like that. I wonder why. I think one of the big problems is for some reason people out there in the pop culture world who try to do things about Buddhism don't realize that we sit on cushions. I assume the form of Buddhism they're referencing in this series is Theravada Buddhism, which tries to adhere to what they think is the original form of Buddhism based on the oldest extant texts. So I was trying to find out if Theravada Buddhists also used a cushion. I assume they do, because the Buddha is supposed to have sat on a rock covered with a deerskin. He didn't sit with his butt directly on the ground. That's the point. And that helps you get your butt up and your knees down, and you get this nice tripod arrangement. And you're supposed to sit with your back straight. I was trying to find a set of Theravada Buddhist meditation instructions on the internet, and what I found was a bunch of instructions on what to do with your head. So a lot of Buddhist meditation instruction that I see in the sort of, I don't know, blogos, what is it called? The internets, is all about what to do with your head when you meditate, like what to think about and, be mindful of your breath and et cetera, and doesn't tell you anything about posture. Whereas the Zen form of meditation really is all about posture. If you read Dogen's description on how to do Zazen, he spends, I'd say, 75%, maybe 80 or 90% of his meditation instructions are how to get your posture right. And then very little about what to do with your brain. He basically says, think the thought of not thinking. It is different from thinking. That's it. But so if you're trying to meditate without sitting on a cushion, your knees are gonna go way up in the air, and it's gonna be very hard. I'm doing a little hunched over posture. It's gonna be very hard to keep your back straight. So you see a lot of that. And we hear this woman who, her name is Amrit, the character's name, and she's an Indian woman, or Dr. Amrit. I only found this out on the internet. I don't think her name is ever mentioned in the show. She's a kind of minor character, but she appears in a bunch of episodes. And she tells Zion, the guy who's meditating, "Let us calm our chattering monkey minds and find in the silence what is timeless." And we also learn in the first episode that the Ratcliffe family's daughter, Piper, who seems to be maybe just finishing university, it's hard to tell, and she plans to spend a year in a monastery in Thailand, and that's why she's brought everybody here. Although she, spoiler alert again, she has told her parents that she's here to interview this famous monk to work on her thesis in Eastern religions. And Piper, in one scene in episode 1, is reading a book by this famous monk, and the book says in voiceover to her, "Identity is a prison. We build the prison, lock ourselves inside, and throw away the key." So that's pretty straight up Buddhism. The writer didn't get anything wrong there. And then we have Saxon, who is Piper's brother, who's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger's son, who appears, at least from this show, to be a better actor than Arnold Schwarzenegger. He plays a really good kind of dick character. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. He's kind of a jerk. But anyway, he tells his brother, his younger brother Lachlan, who appears to be in high school, about his opinion of Buddhism. He says, "Buddhism is for people who want to suppress in life. They're afraid. Don't get attached. Don't have desires. Don't even try. Just sit there in the lotus position with your thumb up your ass," which is kind of what it looks like they're doing. Literally. I don't know. And their posture is so bad. But it is good to want things as long as you can get them. Getting what you want in life, that's happiness, bro. So that's a kind of a typical counter a lot of people give to Buddhism. So in episode 2, we have another quick meditation session in which a character named Rick, goes to Amrit, again, the Indian woman who teaches meditation at the hotel, and she tells him, "Meditation can bring relief to psychic pain. Meditation can help you see that the identity you've created brings you suffering." And Rick, who's a very depressed sort of fellow in the show, says, "I don't need to detach. I'm already nothing." So yeah, she's getting it right there. I don't have any real problem with that. Then in episode 3, we don't get a whole lot of Buddhism, but we get a character, a Thai character who appears in the show, who's kind of, he's a guy who mans the booth where they let cars into the hotel or something, and he wants to be a security guard, but he's not yet. A little subplot there going on. And we see him going to a temple to make an offering to the Buddha, we assume. And this is kind of typical of how people... I've never been to Thailand, but I've lived in Japan for a long time. And what I saw there is a lot of people are ostensibly Buddhist. They call themselves Buddhists, but they often don't know a whole lot about Buddhism. For them, Buddhism is almost like Christianity is for a lot of people in the West. They just kind of go through the motions. They don't really know the intellectual side. They probably don't meditate at all. They probably don't study Buddhism as a philosophy or anything, but they do the ritual stuff, and that's what they're showing us here in that scene. Oh, and we also get a cute little scene where Lachlan, who I just told you, the youngest son of the Ratcliffe family, is having a posture session of all things, and the guy teaching him says, "You meet people on their plane of reality, but what is your reality?" Which to me, that's kind of typical TV show gobbledygook fake Buddhism, but it's cute. In episode 4, the Buddhism we get there is again Amrit, the Indian lady who teaches meditation. I believe she's she's talking to Rick, who's a depressed guy who is there, spoiler alert, to try to find and maybe kill the guy who killed his father. And she's telling Rick, you can let go of your story. You can escape the karmic cycle. Find peace in this life. So yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, it's shallow, but it's all right. In episode 5, the most interesting thing, Buddhist-wise, that happens is Rick, as again I told you, he is the guy who's come to Thailand to find the guy who killed his father and maybe kill that guy. He meets his old friend Frank. And apparently Rick and Frank used to be kind of wild guys together, getting drunk and getting crazy a lot. And then Frank, who seems to owe Rick a favor, though they never explain exactly what it is, but that helps move the plot along, that Frank owes Rick a favor. Frank has, he said, found religion. He took partying as far as it could go. Apparently, when he went to Thailand a few years before all this happened, he got into partying and drinking and drugging and a lot of sex, and sex with ladyboys as well as with women, and then sex with men too. And he says, what is desire? I could F a million people and not be satisfied. And he says, I got into Buddhism, which is all about spirit versus form, detaching from the self, getting off the never-ending carousel of lust and suffering, which is, close enough. If you're writing a character who's kind of new to Buddhism and is kind of getting into it and may not, and is trying to explain to his friend who doesn't know anything about Buddhism what it is, it's believable enough. It's not a really super accurate depiction of Buddhism because there's this whole thing, and you can watch my video specifically about this, about spirit in Buddhism, and this comes up again. But Buddhism doesn't really believe in spirit as a thing, but yeah, let's not go into that here. Let's let you watch one of my other videos about that. Episode 6, we finally get to meet the famous Buddhist monk that Piper, the daughter of the Ratliff family, the rich family, she's obsessed with him and reading his books, and his name is Luang Por Tira. And I looked it up on the internet, and he's played by a guy who is a journalist and an actor, a Thai fellow, but not an actual monk himself. And you can kind of tell the way he sits is not the way somebody who's been doing meditation for a long time would sit. His knees are way up in the air, so he doesn't seem to be used to sitting on a cushion. Maybe he's also not sitting on a cushion. He's Thai himself, so he should know better. Well, we can't see if he's sitting on a cushion or not, but he looks a little awkward in his posture, but he's pretty convincing as a Buddhist monk. I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be based somewhat, at least, on Thich Nhat Hanh, because he's an old Asian guy. Thich Nhat Hanh was Vietnamese. This guy is Thai. It's close enough, but Thich Nhat Hanh was a Zen Buddhist, and this guy, I assume, although they never tell you, he must be a Thai forest Buddhist, which is a different form of Buddhism. And Piper gets her dad to meet with the old Buddhist monk to tell him about what the deal is about this monastery that his daughter wants to go to for a year. Ziggy, can you hold it down for a minute? He tells the dad that a lot of young people from the U.S. come here to his monastery because they've lost connection with nature, family, the spirit, and then he points to his chest. So again, we're introducing the concept of spirit and soul, which is pretty complicated in Buddhism, but it seems to be... I'm not sure. Maybe if he's talking to an American, he might be inclined to use that word to explain it in terms the American can understand. And he also tells the dad, everyone runs from pain to pleasure only to find when they get there more pain. Which is pretty relevant to the plot of the show, because that's exactly what the dad has found, because his whole business is collapsing and everything, and he's looking at some pain in his life coming up. You cannot outrun pain. That's what he says. And then the dad asks the old Buddhist monk what happens after we die. And the Buddhist monk says, When you're born, you're like a single drop of water flying upwards, separated from one giant consciousness, from the one giant consciousness. You get older, you descend back down, you die, you land back into the water, become one with the ocean again. No more separated, the cutesy, bad English. No more suffering, one consciousness. Death is a happy return, like coming home. So this is kind of close enough. I think Dogen might have some problems with this idea that when you die, you descend back into the ocean of oneness, because he specifically condemns that idea as being a non-Buddhist idea in Bendowa. So if you want to go read Dogen's famous essay Bendowa, a talk on pursuing the way of Buddhism, you can find where he kind of says he doesn't like that idea. But on the other hand, Buddhism does have this idea that we are all ultimately united, and I'm getting too deep into this. Let's just go on. We get another scene where there's a lecture by Luang Partira, the old Buddhist monk, and Lachlan, the youngest son of the rich family, and Piper are both there listening to this, and he's giving them sort of a guided meditation, I guess, and he's saying, let's shut down our monkey mind. As thoughts emerge, acknowledge them. Say hello. He does a little wave. And at this moment, Lachlan flashes back to a scene that happened in an earlier episode, spoiler alert again, in which he had a kind of a three-way with his brother and a woman, and it was a very weird experience because they were on a lot of drugs. And this is interesting because I thought, well, this is the kind of thing that does happen when one meditates. We'll often get, especially when you're first starting with a meditation practice, you'll often get flashes of memories that you've been trying to suppress. So that's what happens in this scene. So I thought that was pretty good. In episode 7, we get another funny meditation scene with this British girl named Chelsea, who's one of the main characters in the show, tries to teach Saxon, who's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger's son, who's the kind of jerky older brother of Lachlan. She is trying to teach him how to meditate, and they're sitting on a bed, both in terrible posture. And Chelsea gives Saxon a bunch of books, which will come up in episode 8, and says she's a genius. So it's books by a female author, and we assume it's some kind of spirituality, but we never get to see what the books are or who the author is. Episode 8 begins with a lecture by the monk, and the old monk says, our solutions are temporary, a quick fix. They create more anxiety, more suffering. There is no resolution to life's questions. It is easier to be patient once we accept that there is no resolution. This is actually, I think, pretty good, although it's not. I mean, it's Buddhist adjacent. It's something a Buddhist might say. It's not really doctrinal stuff, but it's a good way to put it. But I think that line is more there to help advance the plot, because it kind of has to do with the plot. And in this episode, we also get a scene which I LOL'd at. I actually laughed out loud, in which Chelsea is talking about the books that she had given to Saxon in the previous episode. And she says the book talks about the laws of the universe, how we're all connected. We are in groups with people we know and don't know, and these groups are working together to fulfill this divine plan, and you don't know who's in your group and who's not. And the reason I laughed at this is it's Bokaноnism. It is actually a philosophy that comes out of Kurt Vonnegut's book. Kurt Vonnegut Jr., the novelist, wrote a book called Cat's Cradle, and in that book, one of the characters is named Bokanon, who created a religion based on lies. He tells you right at the outset that the religion is based on lies. But one of the aspects of this religion is that we're all in these groups called karas, which work together to do God's work in the universe. And there's also false karases, which are called granfaloons. It's a fascinating book, and I highly recommend it. I used to call myself a Bokanonist before I got into Buddhism, because I think there's actually some wisdom in Bokaноnism, but it's not Buddhism, and it's presented in the context of the show as if it's Buddhism or as if it's sort of Eastern religion wisdom, but it's stuff from Kurt Vonnegut. And I'm not sure why the author of the show put that in there, except maybe it's an in-joke, because it doesn't really have much to do with the plot or anything. So, and it doesn't have anything to do with Buddhism. And then we get another scene of Guy Talk, the Thai guy who is, I almost said pie guy, the Thai guy who's wants to be a security guard, and he's offering incense at a temple. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I did avoid most of the major spoilers in the show. And I thought the treatment of Buddhism in this show was pretty good. I think that maybe some of the mistakes might be deliberate, because we're presenting this thing that goes on in a luxury hotel, and we can kind of assume that this woman, Amrit, who they chose to be their meditation instructor at this luxury hotel, is more chosen because of her ability to deal with rich folks than her, insight into what Buddhism is all about. So, it would make sense that she gets some things wrong. And it would make sense that a lot of characters get things wrong. There is also an overarching theme to this episode about how the three Buddhist poisons, greed, hate, and delusion, kind of ruin everything for the people in the show. But then that's also present in the previous 2 seasons, which are not about Buddhism at all. So, so make of that what you will. So, yeah, there you go. I've already gone on way too long. That's my little Buddhist review of White Lotus Season 3. I recommend it. I think it's a good show, and as I said, I think their treatment of Buddhism is not too bad, but I wouldn't use this as to introduce somebody to Buddhism, because it gets, it doesn't get anything wildly wrong, but it's kind of not quite there, if you ask me. But there you go. I like the show. Anyway, if you want to donate to me being able to subscribe to Max, where the show is shown, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, or that you're about to hear if you are listening to the audio version, and that is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. Your donations are my main source of income, and I appreciate your support, but as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. All right, we'll see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Sorry this one is so long. That's what she said. Bye. Hey, Ziggy. Are you ready to go inside? He's asking me to go inside because this is the time we usually go inside. Hey, Ziggy, wait a minute. Can I ask you a question? Did you like the White Lotus? Mostly you just slept through it. He slept on the couch between me and my wife while we watched the show. All right, Ziggy. Let's go inside and edit the video.